Somewhere in ancient Japan, in a small mountain village, there lived a young man who was known for two things: his intelligence and his temper. He was not a bad person. In fact, the village respected him. He was sharp, he was capable, and everyone around him could see that he had the potential to become something great. But every time someone challenged him, every time he was disrespected or overlooked or tested, he reacted loudly, immediately, without pause. And because he reacted, people learned how to move him. Rivals knew exactly which words to say to throw him off balance. Elders in the village had quietly stopped trusting him with important decisions, not because he lacked ability, but because they could never be sure which version of him would show up when things got difficult. One autumn, a traveling monk passed through the village and stayed for several days. The young man, having heard of the monk's wisdom, came to him with a question that had been quietly troubling him for years. He said, "Master, I have everything I need to succeed. I am educated, I am strong, I am willing to work. So why does it feel like I keep getting in my own way?" The monk said nothing for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to the small stream behind the hut where he was staying. He picked up a stone and threw it into the center of the water. The stream erupted into ripples, the reflection of the trees, and the sky completely shattered, distorted beyond recognition. He turned to the young man and said, "What do you see?" The young man said, "Chaos. Nothing is clear." The monk nodded. Then they both stood in silence and watched. Slowly, gradually, the ripples spread and faded. The water settled, and the reflection returned. The trees, the sky, every detail clearer than it had been before the stone was thrown. The monk said, "Your mind is this stream. Every reaction you give, every stone you throw into it, destroys what you are able to see. A man who is always reacting is a man who is always looking at shattered water. He cannot see clearly because he will not allow the surface to settle. But the man who learns to let the water still, he sees everything. He sees what others miss. He moves with precision that looks like luck to those who are always in motion." The young man sat with that for a very long time. He went home and he began to practice the only thing the monk had not said in words, but had made impossible to misunderstand. He began to pause before he reacted. He began to let the water settle before he moved. It was not easy. The first few weeks felt unnatural, almost dishonest, like he was holding back something that deserved to be released. But slowly, something shifted. He started to see situations more clearly. He started to notice the patterns. Who was trying to disturb his water on purpose and why? He started to respond from a place of stillness instead of from the place of the first wave. Within a year, the same village elders who had quietly kept him at a distance began to seek his counsel. Not because he had changed who he was, but because he had stopped allowing every passing stone to define what he could see. That story is almost 2,000 years old in its origins. But I want you to notice something. Nothing about the circumstances of that young man's life changed. The people around him were the same. The challenges were the same. The provocations were the same. The only thing that changed was the stillness of the water inside him, and that changed everything else. That is what this video is about. Not about becoming someone different, about learning to let your water settle so that you can finally see clearly, move deliberately, and stop handing your power to everything and everyone that throws a stone in your direction. If you have been feeling reactive, scattered, or like your emotions are making decisions that your mind later regrets, stay with me through everything I am about to share. This is not theory. This is the practice of a mind that cannot be easily disturbed. If this channel is new to you, subscribe to the Stoic Truth right now. Every week we come here and do work that actually shifts something, not quotes on a screen, not surface-level motivation, the real thing. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and let us begin. 1. The mind that never rests is the mind that never wins. Think about the last time your mind was truly quiet, not asleep, not distracted, actually quiet. For most people, that moment is difficult to remember, because from the second we wake up, the mind is already moving, running through what happened yesterday, worrying about what might happen tomorrow, replaying a conversation from 3 days ago as though rewinding it will somehow change how it ended. And here is the thing nobody tells you about all of that thinking. Most of it is not helping you. Most of it is not solving anything. It is just noise that your mind has learned to generate because silence feels uncomfortable and stillness feels like falling behind. You were never taught to sit with a thought without chasing it. You were taught to respond, to act, to engage. And that training, as well-intentioned as it was, created a mind that treats every thought like an emergency. A thought appears, and immediately you are inside it, following it, expanding it, giving it weight it was never meant to carry. The Stoics saw this clearly. They understood that a mind pulled in every direction is a mind under someone else's control. Not a person's control necessarily, but the control of circumstance, of emotion, of every passing thought that decides to show up uninvited. And they spent their entire philosophy building one idea, that the man who cannot govern his own mind will always be governed by something else. Here is where the shift begins. Not in doing more, not in thinking harder, but in a question as simple as this. Does this thought actually deserve my attention right now? That pause, that 1 second of evaluation, that is where everything changes. Because when you start filtering what deserves your engagement and what does not, your mind begins to settle. The urgency fades, the noise drops, and what is left standing after the unnecessary thoughts have passed is the only thing that actually matters: clarity. You do not find clarity by adding more thinking to the pile. You find it by removing what does not belong there. And the moment you experience that, even briefly, you will understand why every great thinker in history, from the Stoics to the philosophers, to the men who built quiet, lasting power, all pointed to the same thing. The disciplined mind is not the busy mind, it is the selective one. If this is already resonating with something you have been feeling, drop a comment below and tell me, what is the one thought that keeps coming back and stealing your focus? You do not have to explain it. Just name it, because naming it is the beginning of not being owned by it. 2. The words you do not say are the ones that give you power. There is a habit most people do not even realize they have. The moment a thought appears, it becomes words. No pause between the two, no filter, no moment of asking whether this actually needs to be said. The thought rises and the mouth opens, almost automatically, as though silence were a sign of weakness and words were proof of strength. But think about the people in your life whose words actually carry weight, the ones you genuinely listen to when they speak. I want you to really think about this. Are those people the ones who speak the most? Or are they the ones who speak with intention, who choose their words carefully, who say what needs to be said and nothing more. There is a reason we trust the measured voice more than the constant one. The person who speaks without restraint is showing you that they have not yet learned to govern themselves. Every unnecessary word is a small leak of credibility, energy, and presence. And over time, those leaks add up. Most people speak to fill silence because silence makes them uncomfortable. They speak to be seen, to be included, to manage how others perceive them. They explain when no explanation was asked for. They justify decisions that required no defense. They share opinions that add nothing to the room simply because the thought appeared, and they have never questioned whether every thought deserves a voice. When you begin to slow that process down, when you start catching the impulse to speak before you act on it, something unusual happens. You start to realize how much of what you were about to say was not needed. Not because you have nothing valuable to offer, but because most of it was impulse dressed up as communication. And here is what happens when you start being more deliberate with your words. The ones you do choose to say carry more weight. People lean in when you speak because they have learned that when you open your mouth, something worth hearing is coming. Your silence stops being interpreted as absence and starts being felt as presence. And that shift, that quiet, unannounced shift in how the room responds to you, is one of the most powerful things you will ever experience. The Stoics were direct about this. They understood that speech used carelessly was energy spent foolishly, and that the person who could choose silence over the need to be heard was demonstrating the kind of self-governance that most people spend their whole lives chasing without finding. So, here is the practice. The next time you feel the impulse to speak, pause for just 2 seconds. Not to stop yourself permanently, just to ask, does this add anything? Is this coming from clarity or from the discomfort of silence? You will be surprised how often the answer changes what comes out of your mouth, or whether anything comes out at all. Subscribe if you are not already here. This is exactly the kind of thinking we break down every single week on the Stoic Truth, the practical, honest, unsexy work of becoming someone the world cannot easily move. 3. The hidden drain nobody talks about here is something I want you to sit with honestly. Think about where your energy actually goes in a day. Not the big, obvious things, the small ones. The notifications you respond to immediately even when they are not urgent. The conversations you stay in longer than necessary just to avoid the awkwardness of stepping away. The opinions you engage with online that add nothing to your life but somehow pull 30 minutes out of your afternoon. The mental tabs that stay open all day, unresolved, unfinished, quietly draining in the background. None of those things feel significant on their own, but together they are the reason you get to the end of most days feeling like you worked hard and got nowhere. Not because you are lazy, not because you lack discipline, but because your energy, the most valuable thing you have, is leaking out in places too small to notice but too consistent to ignore. The Stoic philosopher Seneca wrote something that I think is one of the most honest observations ever put on paper. He said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." He was not talking about dramatic, obvious waste. He was talking about the quiet, daily dissipation of attention on things that were never worth it in the first place. And here is what makes this personal. Most of us do not waste our time out of laziness. We waste it out of habit. the habit of engaging with everything that presents itself, the habit of treating every incoming demand on our attention as though it is equally deserving of a response, the habit of staying involved in things long after they stopped serving us because detachment feels rude and stepping back feels like giving up. But there is a difference between giving up and pulling back with intention. Giving up is surrendering to difficulty. Pulling back with intention is recognizing that not everything deserves your energy and making a deliberate decision about what does. That decision, quiet, personal, not announced to anyone, is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect you can perform. When you start guarding your attention the way you guard your most valuable possessions, something begins to change. The scattered feeling starts to settle. The sense that you are always behind, always catching up, always reacting to something, that begins to fade. Not because your life gets easier, but because you stop pouring your focus into things that were never going to give you anything meaningful in return. Think about one thing right now, one habit, one conversation, one digital rabbit hole that consistently takes your time and gives you nothing back. Write it in the comments, not to shame yourself, but because seeing it clearly is the first step to choosing differently. 4. The emotion that runs you when you are not paying attention. Now we get to the part that most people want to skip, not because they do not understand it, but because it requires the most honest kind of self-examination. The part where we stop talking about thoughts and words and attention and start talking about what is underneath all of it. Emotion. Not the gentle kind that quietly passes, the kind that rises fast and demands action. The anger that has you typing a response before you have even finished reading the message. The insecurity that makes you over-explain yourself in a room where nobody was questioning you. The doubt that shows up the moment something goes well and whispers quietly that you do not deserve it. The fear that disguises itself as preparation, keeping you stuck in planning because starting feels too exposed. These are not small things, and they are not character flaws. They are patterns. Patterns that were built over years of trying to stay safe, trying to be accepted, trying to avoid the specific kind of pain that found you earlier in life. And because they were built over years, they do not announce themselves anymore. They just run, quietly, automatically, underneath every decision you make, until you learn to see them. Here is the thing about emotion that the Stoics understood and that modern psychology has since confirmed. Emotions are not commands. They feel like commands. They arrive with urgency, with intensity, with a sense that something must be done right now. But that urgency is not evidence of importance. It is just the feeling doing what feelings do, demanding to be acted on immediately before you have had the chance to evaluate whether acting on it is actually the right move. The moment you understand that, the moment you genuinely feel the difference between an emotion that is informing you and an emotion that is controlling you, everything about how you move through the world begins to shift. Viktor Frankl said the space between what happens to you and how you respond is where your freedom lives. That space is not something you either have or do not have. It is something you build. One situation at a time, one breath at a time, one deliberate choice not to react immediately, even when everything in you is screaming that you should. And here is what nobody tells you about building that space. It does not make you cold. It does not make you detached. It makes you present. Because when you are not being hijacked by the emotion of the moment, you can actually see the moment clearly. You can hear what is being said instead of preparing your defense. You can feel what is happening instead of performing a reaction to it. You become more human, not less, because you are finally responding to what is actually in front of you instead of to the story your nervous system has been telling you about it. The practice is simple, but it is not easy. The next time an emotion rises and demands an immediate response, give it 30 seconds before you act. Not to suppress it, not to pretend it is not there, just to let it move through you without letting it make the decision. 30 seconds. And in those 30 seconds, ask one question. Is this response coming from clarity or from the wound? The answer will tell you everything you need to know. 5. When everything comes together. Here is where I want to be honest with you about something. Everything we have talked about in this video, the quieting of the mind, the deliberate use of words, the protection of your energy, the space you create between emotion and response. None of it is a collection of separate habits. It is one thing expressed in different areas of your life. It is the practice of choosing what gets to have you, instead of letting everything have you by default. Most people move through the world in reaction. Something happens and they respond. Someone speaks and they answer. A feeling rises and they obey it. An opportunity appears and they chase it. A distraction calls and they follow. And none of this is malicious. It is just automatic. It is the default setting of a mind that was never taught to pause and ask, is this worth my attention? When you start building the pause, in your thinking, in your speaking, in where your energy goes, in how you respond to emotion, you do not become a different person. You become a clearer version of the person you already are. The noise drops. The scatter settles. And what remains is something most people spend their entire lives searching for in the wrong places. Direction. Not the direction that comes from motivation or excitement or someone else's approval. The quiet internal direction of a person who knows what matters to them, protects it fiercely, and moves toward it without needing to announce every step. That is the kind of person who walks into a room and changes the energy without saying a word. That is the person who, like the quiet trader in that corner of the floor, ends up standing when everyone else who was louder has long gone. Not because life was easier for them, but because they were deliberate when everyone else was reactive. You can be that person. You already have everything you need to start. The only question is whether you are willing to do the quiet, unglamorous, deeply personal work of removing what does not belong, so that what does can finally be seen. If this video served you in any way, if something here named a thing you have been feeling but could not find the words for, like it right now, and share it with someone who needs this, the person in your life who is always running but never arriving, the one who is always busy but never at peace. One share might be exactly what changes the direction of their week. Subscribe to the Stoic Truth if you are not already here. This is the conversation we have every single week, and the next video is already waiting for you. Go watch it and keep building. The work does not end here. It never does. But it starts with the decision to begin. That decision is yours. Make it.